I came across a post on Pinterest that I thought would be interesting to break down a little. It talks about the positive and negative traits of INFJs. Yeah, I'll jump straight into the positive traits they've listed. The first one is that we're extremely intuitive. It's an interesting one to pick as a positive trait because what exactly does that mean? Why is it good that we're intuitive? What's wrong with being sensing? Yeah, a bit of a random first point. The next one is that we're searchers of hidden meaning. I guess that's because of our NI as well. We like looking for the deeper underlying meanings of things. We don't just take things at face value. Yes, that can come in very handy, but it can also be a bit of a negative because it means we can always be looking for more rather than just accepting what somebody says or accepting that things are the way they are and just stopping there. We'll always want to go deeper, so that can be a negative as well. The next one is that we're sensitive and perceptive. Again, that can be a good thing because we're sensitive towards other people. We're not likely to deliberately say things to upset other people, and we're very good at picking up on how others are feeling, so we might want to change the subject if we can see that they're uncomfortable, for example. But it also can be a bad thing that we're sensitive because we can be easily offended if we're not careful of other people, how they say things that might just be putting across a point that's just a fact, and we might take offence to that. So that could be a negative as well. The next one is that we're gifted at reading others. Yeah, that one can come in handy. As I've said, it can mean that we can ensure that people feel comfortable and safe around us. They know that we're not going to say things that upset them, and that we can often pick up when something's wrong, even when that person isn't sure themselves. But again, that can be a bad thing because if we notice that something's wrong with someone and go and ask them and they haven't yet realised that there's anything wrong, then they can feel a bit confused and maybe self-conscious as to what we're picking up on. So that's not always a good thing. We've kind of got to figure out when's a good time to share. I've noticed something's wrong, can I help at all? And when is a good idea to let it be, to just keep them in the back of your mind and find a better time to talk about it when they've figured out that something's wrong themselves too. The next point is that we hold strong convictions and beliefs, which we live in accordance with. That's definitely because of our being more value-focused rather than logic-focused. Yes, that can be good because people know where they stand with us. If I value something, then they know that I'm going to always live in accordance with that. I'm always going to be respectful, I'm always going to be honest, I'm going to be loyal because I value those things. So people know what to expect with us. They know they can trust us to do certain things because that's what we're like. They don't need to worry about, I don't know, can I trust them today? They're going to turn up late. If we value being on time or early, then we're always going to make sure we're on time or early. The next one is that we will not compromise our ideals. I think that's pretty similar to the one before. If we have a notion in our head of how things are supposed to be, we'll make sure that that's how it turns out to be. Again, that can be good if it's aimed at ourselves because we're always wanting to improve ourselves. But if we've got an ideal about a relationship with someone or how we think something should be that involves other people that maybe aren't as willing as we are to change and adapt, then that can cause issues. If we're therefore not happy with the way things are, we want to change, we want to improve things, and the other person or people are not willing to do that, then that can cause a bit of a rift between the group. The next one is that we tend to trust our own instincts with good reason. We are usually right and we usually know it. I'd say that's not always the case. As we get older and more mature, then yes, we do tend to trust our instincts or intuition more often. But when we're younger, I think it's more of a case of after something bad happens, we go, oh, I knew that was going to happen. Oh, it's almost like a voice in my head told me to, or I had a pit in my stomach that something was going to happen. However, people experience their intuition and we start to pick up on that pattern. And over time, we begin to pick up on it telling us before that bad thing has happened. Or if you go out today, it's going to rain, you should take an umbrella, to pick a very small, minor issue. And you ignore it the first 20 times because you don't even realise it's saying anything. And then when it rains, you go, oh, I knew it was going to rain. And you genuinely knew it was going to rain. So maybe the 21st time you actually pick up on, wait a minute, something's telling me it's going to rain. You look at the sky and go, no, it's lovely and blue, I'll be fine. You go out, it rains. For goodness sake, I should have listened to that voice. And then, now that you've identified that something is telling you, it's your intuition, then you can actually start listening to it. So it's definitely not something that, I know for myself, I've not listened to my whole life, but as I've got older I definitely have begun to listen to it, and it's helped me out a lot. I don't think it's necessarily natural for us because it's a strange thing. It's not something that's common in this world. We're not taught to almost predict things and follow through with them. That's not how the world works. We're supposed to base on facts and logic. We're supposed to look at the weather, and if the weather says it's going to be sunny all day, then we're supposed to listen to it and go along with it, and then be cross when it rains. It's not something that is seen as normal, so I guess it takes us a bit longer to realise that actually this is a thing, and actually it's right. If the weather app says it's going to be lovely and sunny, but I have a little hunch that it's going to rain, then I'm going to take my umbrella, and I'm going to be the one with an umbrella when it rains. The next point is that we're genuinely warm and affirming by nature. That's probably because of our secondary FE. We do come across as warm and inviting. We seem like the kind of people that you can sit down and share your deepest, darkest secrets with, and we won't judge you. I'm sure many INFJs, I know I definitely have, experienced that with people coming up to me and feeling like they can share things and then going, my goodness, I don't know why I told you that, I've only just met you, but I feel safe, I feel like I can trust you. So I guess maybe they're picking up on our warm nature, knowing that we're a safe place for them to be themselves, knowing that we're not going to judge them, we're just here to listen and to give them what they need. And I think that's a really nice thing, that people can notice that in us. It links in with the next point, that we're typically gentle and caring. Yeah, I like how they say typically, because of course we're not perfect. We're not always going to be wonderful, kind, caring people. There are going to be days where everything's gone on top of us and we can't be that listening ear for someone to share their problems with. We have to stick our headphones in, we have to just have some time to ourselves. So it's nice to make sure that there is a distinction, that we're not always going to be like that, and it doesn't mean that if we have an off day that, we're not INFJs, because we're not kind and caring and we don't care about everybody else all the time. The next point I'm not sure is necessarily a positive. It's dedicated to finding or achieving the perfect relationship, because that could very easily mean that we're never satisfied, that we're always going to think that the grass is greener somewhere else, and we're always going to keep wanting to try and find that perfect person, which I don't think is a positive at all. I know that I haven't necessarily looked for the perfect relationship myself. I've looked for the one that I think is right for me, the one that builds me up, that challenges me, helps me to grow. I think that's probably the closest you're going to get to perfect, where they help you grow and you help them grow, and together you both challenge each other in certain areas, because that's normal. It helps you to understand where you stand in certain issues more, and to make sure that both of you, your morals line up. I think that's one of the more important things as well. So it's not necessarily perfect. I don't think there is such a thing as perfect. It's finding something that works for you. That's about the best you can get. It hasn't been my life's goal to find the perfect relationship. That's not something I've ever been that interested in finding. So it was interesting that they popped that point in there, because I know for me, I've not experienced that. I don't know whether other INFJs will have made that their life's goal, or been dedicated to finding that, or given up on relationships because they don't feel they're perfect. The next point is that we usually have good communication skills, which is an interesting thing to say for an introvert. I mean, as long as we've had time to think about things, we're better over text or email or something of that nature, because we have the time to sit and come up with the best way of responding. It's not just a spur of the moment, you speak, I speak straight back. In that scenario, we're not always the best. Sometimes we say things that we don't mean, or it comes across in the completely wrong way. We don't explain ourselves very well. So no, we're not good communicators in the spur of the moment often, unless it's something we know a lot about. We often need time to sit and process and come up with the best response. So as long as you're talking to us in a way that gives us time to respond back, then yes, we can be very good with communication. I guess going along with that point as well is that we tend to be gifted writers. That's again because we have the time to think about what we want to say. Writing, for example, a book isn't something people are expecting by tomorrow, so you have the time to write it out, mull it over in your head, come back, read it again, see if it sounds the way you were imagining it, because I know that's something that we often struggle with, is getting our ideas and thoughts out on paper. It's coming from our intuition out through our SE onto paper out into the world, that can be the difficult part for us. So that's why it can take us a while to figure out the right thing that we want to say, because we're not quite sure how to attach the abstract ideas we have in our head down to the real world. But I think once we improve that and work on it, become better at it, then we definitely become better communicators, and writing's a very good way of growing and of learning how to do that better. The next one is that we take commitments very seriously. Again, that's going to be based on morals. It's going to be based on whether you value being loyal and having integrity, which I know I definitely do. I don't know if it's something that every single INFJ is going to value. I wouldn't say it was necessarily part of our personality to take commitments seriously. It's more just that we often tend to value the same thing, like loyalty and integrity and respect, which means that we will therefore take commitments seriously. But that isn't necessarily something that's because of our personality specifically. The next thing is that we seek lifelong relationships. I think that ties in, again, with the taking commitment seriously. We aren't often after something that's not going to last. Because we have dominant NI, we fire ahead into the future, looking for pitfalls, looking to see whether something's going to work or not. So we'll aim to find relationships that are going to last in the long term. We don't necessarily see the point of having a one-night stand or being in a friendship that we know isn't going to last very long at all. Doesn't necessarily make sense. And I think as well, because we're introverted, we don't enjoy that first time of meeting someone and being really awkward and uncomfortable. We like to be around people that we know quite well, that know us, and we feel like we can open up to them a little bit. That we've passed that awkward initial stage of only being able to do small talk, and we can go into the deeper things. We can talk about different topics that aren't necessarily appropriate for a first time of meeting someone. We like connections with people, so we want to find people that we can go the distance with, that we can see ourselves eventually opening up to. So I guess that's why we look for long-term relationships. That's not just with partners, that can be with friends as well. The next point, again, I don't see why it's a positive thing. It can be quite negative at times. So that we have very high expectations of ourselves and others. I know for me, I more have high expectations of myself. I don't tend to put that on other people too much, because at the end of the day, everybody has free will. It's their choice if they want to grow and improve themselves, and if they don't want to, then who am I to force that upon them? But I know I definitely have high expectations of myself. If I know I can do better, then I want to do better. But I wouldn't say that's a positive thing. Being a perfectionist, always wanting to grow and improve, it can be really tiring and can often lead to things like depression and anxiety. So it's not always a positive trait. The next point is that we're good listeners. I think a lot of that will come from how much we value people taking the time to listen to us, knowing that we're often a bit different from everyone else, a bit out of the box, and it can be hard for people to actually want to sit down and listen to us and hear us out, but we know it's very important for us. We like to share our views and opinions and figure out the world. We like to ask lots of questions. Because we have extroverted feeling, we often need to share our thoughts and feelings about certain topics in order to understand them more. So we know how important it is for us to have a listening ear. So I think maybe it's almost inbuilt into us to therefore want to be good at listening to other people, to be that ear for them, to just share things in a non-judgmental environment, because we want it ourselves. Again, this isn't something that everybody's going to do. It's not, I don't know if it's necessarily part of our personality, but I'm sure the vast majority of us have had plenty of times where we've not been listened to, we've not been understood, where people have not sat down and taken that extra time to get to know us. Because we're not like everybody else, it can take a while for us to drop our walls down so that we can let somebody in. And it's not something that everybody wants to take the time and do, so we therefore value it. The next point is that once we are sure a relationship is over, we are usually able to move on. Again, I'm not quite sure why that's popped in here. I wouldn't say it's something that we'd be that good at, to be perfectly honest. I know for me, I see the potential in people. I can see areas they can grow in, and I want to be there for them if they choose that they want to try and reach that potential. I don't necessarily want to give up on people. I like to be there for them just in case. Mine would tend to be, if they decide they want the relationship to be over, then I'll let go. But other than that, I want to be there just in case, because they might be going through a difficult time, and I don't want them to feel like they're alone. I'd want them to feel like they have somebody there. Maybe it's different with romantic relationships versus friendships. And with friendships, it's a little bit easier because you're not as invested, and you can look and see this needs to be a mutual thing. We need to both be able to talk and listen, be able to share problems and be able to help the other person. And if you can see that it's very one-sided, then I guess it could be easier to decide that you don't want to carry on that friendship. But romantic relationships, because you invest a lot more in, it can be more difficult to want to leave. And you know them better, and you care more, I guess. The next point is that we're deep, complex and intense. Again, maybe that's a positive, because people will find us mysterious, maybe. That we're intriguing. We're someone that people want to get to know because we're unlike probably most other people they've ever met. We have a depth to us that can be quite fascinating, can be something that people want to discover. I'm not sure it's necessarily that much of a positive thing from the perspective of an INFJ, because that means we're very difficult to get to know, that we most likely won't find many other people we can completely relate to. We'll find most other people shallow and superficial and boring, and that's not necessarily a good thing, because the vast majority of people are sensors. So it would be easier for us if we were happy to have that kind of a relationship with people, but we're not. We need that depth. And it's not always a good thing to be intense. It means that we can be a bit much for people sometimes. People need to take a bit of a break away from us, because the amount of questions we're asking or whatever, we're trying to figure out something and share that with someone, it can be quite difficult. The topics we like to look up can be quite out of the box. The philosophical, psychological way, things our brain likes to learn about, can be too much for people sometimes. And yeah, we can come across as too intense, and they just need a bit of a break from us. That's not necessarily a good thing, but it's something that we need to accept, that we can be too much for people sometimes, that they just need to take a step back and have a bit of time away, and then they can come back and be around us again. The next point is that we're artistic and creative. That's not something I'd necessarily say about INFJs. I mean, I guess in the writing area we can be very creative, but being artistic and creative tends to bring up thoughts of being very good at painting or drawing or building things, sort of tangible things, which isn't necessarily where we thrive, where we're naturally good at. So it's not something I would have popped down for being an INFJ, one of their positive traits. The next thing is that we strive to create an orderly, systematic outer world for ourselves. I've sort of said this in one of my previous videos, that I find it interesting how there's a stereotype that INFJs are very outwardly neat. I think that's backwards from learning about cognitive functions myself. We're going to be more interested in ordering and organising ourselves inside our own heads, making sure that we know what we're doing and when we're doing it. But the outside world, because our SE is lower down, we're not as interested in it. Yes, we don't like to live in a complete pigsty, but if things aren't all organised and colour-coded and in the perfect place, we're not bothered. We don't mind a couple of piles of books and paperwork dotted about, as long as it's not in the way. I tend to be of the impression that someone with extroverted sensing or extroverted intuition up high is more likely to be interested in having an organised environment, making sure it's nice and neat and tidy and ordered, because that's their main focus, is looking outward into the environment. Me with my NI, my main focus is to look inward, so I'm not going to be as bothered about how the external world looks. I'm more interested in making sure that my thoughts and feelings and everything is organised, and I know what I'm doing and when I'm doing it, my goals, my values, all of that internal stuff is more where my focus is going to be initially. The next point is that we are constantly defining and redefining priorities in life. Again, that really might not be a positive thing, because that means we're never happy where we are. We're never able to just sit in the current moment and be content with where we are in life. We're always going to want to be trying to achieve the next thing. Okay, so I've got a job, right? Well, do I want to do this as a career? No. Okay, what's the next step? Do I need to go to university? Do I need to do a course? Do I need to get more experience under my belt? Do I need to try and work up the ranks here a little bit? Should I start looking for another job now? Or the house? Where am I living now? Do I want to live here forever? No. Do I want to buy somewhere? Yes. Okay. Do I need to get a better job so I can afford it more? Should I look at mortgages? Should I look at areas? Where's a good place to live? We're always, as soon as we reach one goal, we're already looking at the next 10 goals we need to achieve. We don't ever really stop and just be happy that we've achieved something. We don't ever congratulate ourselves, well done, I've completed this one goal. As soon as we've completed it, we've got the next 10 lined up, so then we're just moving straight on to do those. And it can almost feel like we're just running around in a hamster wheel all the time, because we never stop and feel like this is enough. I've achieved a certain amount, I'm happy with what I've achieved, let's put that to bed and let's go on to something else. There never is that, let's stop here. There's always more we can do, more we can achieve, more we can learn. I don't think that's a good thing, because again, we're never completely content with our lives. We always see areas we can improve, things we can do better. The next point is that we put lots of energy into identifying the best system for getting things done. That's definitely more of a positive than the previous point. It means that we don't often expend our energy in an area that we're not 100% sure about. We may sit for a while and plan and process and figure things out before we start, because we want to make sure that when we actually go and start putting energy into something, it's the right thing to do. And yeah, that can be good, because once we've found the best system, then we will stick to it, potentially. But then, do you ever find the best system? There's always ways to improve things. And also it can mean that we spend a lot of time procrastinating. We don't actually start anything because we haven't found the best way to do it. Rather than just jumping in, giving it a go and dealing with problems as they come up, we want to try and figure out all of the problems in theory, in our little conceptual mind. So in order to make sure that we don't actually have any problems when we do start, but that can mean that we never ever do actually take that first step, because we're too busy trying to figure out things with the limited information we have. So yeah, it can cause a lot of procrastination, which is not necessarily always helpful. The next point is that we operate on an intuitive, spontaneous basis within our inner world. INFJ and spontaneous is not normally used in the same sentence. We're not very spontaneous with anything. We like to plan things. We like to know how things are going to work. It's a coping mechanism, I think, for us. It's something that calms us. If we're feeling stressed out, then we turn to planning and organising things. So being spontaneous is not necessarily something we'll naturally do. I'm not quite sure what they mean within our inner world. How can I be spontaneous inside my head? Not 100% sure on what they mean by that. The next thing is that we intuitively know things without being able to pinpoint exactly why, and without even a thorough knowledge of the subject at hand. That kind of goes back to one of the first points of how once we learn to listen to our intuition, it tells us what is likely to happen. It's not knowing the future, it's not being psychic. NI is very, very good at picking up on patterns, and it's very quick to do that. So when we start listening to it, we will almost know things before they're going to happen. It might be difficult for us to explain. I know I've tried to do it a few times, and now that I'm conscious of the process, it's easier for me to explain how I know. It's easier for me to come up with most likely reasons and logic of why my NI has told me this. It's not always a good thing of being able to do this without a thorough knowledge, especially when it's coming into, should I start a new project? Should I work towards this new goal? Should I change jobs? Things like that. When your NI is trying to work it out and figure out what to do without much knowledge, it's not always helpful, because it doesn't know what's going to happen. This world isn't very predictable. Certain small things are, but you can't predict whether you're going to be in a job for the rest of your life and have a wonderful pension and get your dream home, when you're just reading an application form. So it's not always helpful to rely completely on your NI before you take that first step. You do have to give it a go, which I know is not something we enjoy, but yeah, you're not going to know everything. It's making sure that you don't rely too much on your NI to tell you things before they happen. Otherwise you end up not living, not trying, not making mistakes, not failing and learning from your mistakes, which is more important most of the time. The next point is that we're extremely insightful about people and situations. Kind of one of the first points covered that mostly, that yeah, we can almost know things about people and pick up on things using our NI and FE. We can read people and situations and know the best course of action, the best thing to say, so we often avoid conflict because of it. The next point annoys me massively because it's such a stereotype that we're most likely of all types to have psychic abilities. I personally wouldn't mention anything about being psychic because people tend to assume that because we have dominant NI that means we're psychic. I mean, I haven't spoken to other INFJs to see if any do have psychic abilities, but I probably wouldn't have put that in there just because it's such a prominent stereotype that we can predict the future, when in fact no, we can't. We're just making assumptions based on past and present patterns. We're picking the most likely outcome and going along with that. That's not being psychic, that's just something our brain naturally does. The next point is that we are concerned for others' feelings and careful not to hurt them. Kind of isn't everyone, to a certain extent. Yes, some people tend to not be bothered with the general public, but they are with those select few that they hold dear. Tends to be the thinkers and the introverts, tend to be more interested in their inner circle. But yeah, we are concerned for others' feelings, so I guess that is a positive. The next thing is that we're perfectionists. Again, why is that a positive trait? If you're not an INFJ and you're looking in, you're not a perfectionist yourself, you might think that's a really good thing to have. It means their work is always going to be brilliant, they're never going to submit anything until they're happy with it, everything they do is going to be to the best of their ability. But when you are living the life of a perfectionist, it's not exactly pleasant. Everything you put out, you pick holes in, you see the ways that it's not perfect, you see ways that you could improve, and you therefore don't feel comfortable putting it out there in the world until you know it is perfect, which we all know because nobody is perfect. What you do is never going to be perfect. There are always going to be things you say or do that are wrong, or that someone else doesn't understand, or that upset someone. You're never ever going to get it 100% right. You're never going to make sure that what you put out in the world is going to be the perfect thing for everybody to hear. Not everybody's going to understand my videos. Not everybody's going to like my videos. Not everybody's going to like me, the way I put things across, how my brain works, the opinions I have. That was something I had to get over, and I still do before I put videos out, that this isn't perfect. It's the best I can do in the current moment, which is what I try to work with. Can I put out anything way, way better than I am right now? If the answer is no, then I stick with it. I'm still learning and growing. I haven't quite figured out exactly where I want this channel to go, so I'm still playing around with different things. Playing around with, do I enjoy doing videos like this? Do I enjoy doing some of the other videos I've done? I'm treating it as a journey of learning, which I think makes it a lot easier for me to not worry so much about being a perfectionist, because I'm learning. It's a journey for me, so it's not going to be perfect because it's not the finished product. So I think that definitely helps me. I don't know whether that would help anybody else. The next point is that we believe in constant growth and are always looking to improve. A lot of these are very, very similar, and I kind of covered a lot of them before. But yeah, it's good that we always want to grow and change and become better people. That's always a good mindset to have, but it can be negative, it can be difficult because we're never happy with the way we are. I never will sit here and look at myself and go, yes, I'm perfect right now. I don't need to change anything about myself. I'm always going to reel off a list of however many points of things I can improve, things I can say differently, things I need to learn more about, things I need to do differently, things I need to do more of, do less of. So again, as I've said before, it can be difficult because we're never content in the present moment. I think that's something that I admire in a lot of the sensing types. They are able to just be content with how they are now and the way things are now. Yes, they're not perfect, but they're good enough and they're okay with that. It's something that I myself, and I'm sure a lot of other INFJs, don't feel, and probably never will feel, just happy with how things are now, without NI firing off with, yeah, but this could be better, that could be better, you need to work on this, you need to do this, you're getting older, you should have more goals, you should be looking to buy a house, you should be in a better job, all these different things. It's hard to quiet all of that and just be content. The next one's kind of funny. We can, in some ways, be easygoing. Why in some ways? I guess because they said previously that we're intense and very deep, so if we're intense we can't therefore be easygoing. But yeah, I mean, at times we can be easygoing. When we're in a good place, we can sort of read, okay, let's not go into all of these topics because they're far too deep and they won't suit the conversation or the people that we're around. And yeah, we can come across as fairly easygoing, but I think that's something that people might pick up on when they don't know us too well, because it's probably a mask that we put on, that we're very easygoing and fun-loving and just light-hearted. But once you get to know us, you then see that depth. And I think by default, because we're deep people, we can't therefore always be easygoing, because there's so much going on in our heads, so much that we're learning and figuring out and discovering and wanting to talk about. The next point is that we're natural nurturers. We make loving parents and are likely to have strong bonds with our children. It's an interesting point to add in with INFJs, because most parents are nurturers, most parents are loving. I'm not sure I've ever heard that distinguished as INFJs are better at being nurturers. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know why they picked that point. I mean, yes, we'll definitely have strong bonds with our children. Yes, we'll definitely want to make sure that they grow up in an environment where they feel safe, they feel comfortable to just be themselves, whether what they're being is right, wrong, doesn't matter, as long as they know they're not judged, that they're loved no matter what they do, who they are, what they choose to do, whether they make mistakes or not, that they're loved and that we're always proud of them. So yeah, maybe that comes from a lot of us not always feeling that when we're younger. We're not always, whether from parents or from teachers or other children at school, I'm sure that's probably the case for most people, that we're not always appreciated. So maybe because we've grown up having somewhere in our lives not giving us that non-judgmental environment, that we'll make sure we do that with our children. The next point is that we're devoted to and protective of those we care about. As I said before, I highly value loyalty and integrity, which does mean I will always be devoted to those I care about, those I love, and therefore I'll be protective of them. I want to make sure that they don't get hurt as much as I possibly can do, which I know we're not always able to, but yeah, I guess it probably comes from a value thing, that we care about people. We want to make sure that they're loved and appreciated, and so yeah, we'll be protective of them because we know the world's not a very nice place. We know that it can be quite horrible sometimes. People can say things that can really hurt you. Again, I'm sure vast majority of INFJs, if not most types, have experienced being bullied in school, having people say horrible things just because children in groups in school are horrible. They pick on people that are different to them for whatever reason. You know, it can be because of a disability, because of the colour of your skin, the colour of your hair, the way you talk. It can be absolutely anything, or it can be nothing at all. It can be a positive thing. Maybe you're smarter than them, maybe you're taller than them, maybe you're prettier than them, maybe you talk better than they do. It could be anything. They will find something that's different about you and pick on it. So maybe because a lot of us have experienced that, we therefore want to be protective of those we care and love, because we don't want them to go through that anymore. We want to make sure that they know there's a safe place that is us, that they can come back to, go out into the horrible world, and then they can come back to us and know that they're safe and they're loved. The penultimate point is that we like to work independently. Again, I'm not quite sure why that was picked as a positive trait, because most stuff is group work. It's very important that we can communicate with other people and that we can work well with other people. We're naturally social creatures, we're community creatures. We are built to work together in a community, to have one person that's good at one thing, another person that's good at another, and to share our knowledge and our abilities with each other, to make sure that all areas are covered. So yes, it's good that we can work independently, we don't need other people, but it's also important that we can work with others as well. I prefer to work independently, but that's only because most of the time when I've worked with other people, they've slacked off and let me do all the work because they knew I would, because I wanted to get good grades. So I'd put in all the work and I'd do the work for the whole group. And it was only when I started getting brave and telling the teacher, actually I've done all of this, and they started not getting grades for it, that changed. But yeah, the last point is that we're the rarest of all types. Again, why is that a positive trait? I'd say it's a negative trait because it can bring up lots of different things. Maybe we don't find people we can completely relate to. Maybe some people get the whole special snowflake thing, although I would have thought if anyone thought they were better than someone else because they're an INFJ, it probably means they're not actually an INFJ, because we know that that's not a good thing. Not finding anyone else who's like us, who thinks the same way we do, who sees the world through eyes that are very similar to ours, that's not a positive thing. That's sad. That everybody else we speak to there'll be a disconnect somewhere. Yes, there'll be more similarities if we find another intuitive type or another person with NI high up, but there's always going to be a little bit of a disconnect. And I don't see that as a good thing. I think that can be quite sad sometimes. Maybe it's good for other people that we're the rarest type because we're so strange, so different to what anybody else has experienced, so people are fascinated by us. So maybe in that way it's nice that there aren't too many of us, because I don't know if it would be a good thing if there were billions of INFJs out there. I don't know, I've never met one, so I don't know what it would be like to have loads and loads and loads and loads of us around. But yeah, clearly this person that wrote this thinks it's a good thing that we're rare, for whatever reason, because they're glad there aren't too many of us, or yeah, I'm not quite sure why, but yeah. I think I'll do the negative traits they've listed in the video next week. This one's getting a bit too long. But yeah, anyway, as always, thank you for your time.